5 deuce off, we'll toss. And 8-4 suited. If everyone had folded to us after this player open shoved and the blinds were in regs, I would ISO shove the 8-4 suited. A lot of times players in the blinds are going to tighten up a decent amount when we shove this over the limp. So this quote-unquote shove, it's actually just a call for 371, even though it's going to be just as profitable to open shove any hand compared to when this player limped. So if these guys fold, there's a ton of overlay, and if they'll tighten up as a result, then we can shove. But against decent or loose players, we'll just fold that. Jack 5 offsuit I would fold. We don't have much fold equity with the big blind, so I would simply toss that and shove around Jack 8 as the bottom of my range. And 7-10 offsuit I would also toss. We don't have all that much fold equity. We're in a bad situation. I just take the blind. But again, I don't think this was an inevitable situation. There were spots like the King 3 suited under the gun that I'd rather shove instead of finding myself in spots like this. Queen Jack offsuit we're going to call here. Make a pot odds call. And pretty sweet flop. 6-5 suited will definitely open shove. Now, the cutoff open shoves instead, and the question is, can we 3-bet shove to isolate? And the answer is usually not. If we're getting 2-1, we definitely can, and potentially worse odds. So if this guy, we do have a read that he's a very wide shover, and he is going to be shoving something like 2/3 of hands, then I would just put it in, because we have the equity that we need against his range. We would have open shoved had everyone folded to us, but without that read, it's fine to just fold. 10-7 offsuit, I would open shove on the button, had everyone folded to us. Jack 8, we can open shove. And with the current action, we'll just toss it. Jack 6 suited. This is another one that's pretty close. It's probably going to be a bit outside of the Nash range, but even so, we only have an M of under 4, and we are going to get blinded out fairly soon. So I would make this opponent dependent. If we have mainly regs left to act who we think are going to call us wide enough, then I would tend to toss it. But against weaker players, even 1 or 2 weaker players left to act, or a big blind who tends to underdefend, or a stats that looks like he'll underdefend, say like 15/5, then I would open shove. And by, say, Jack 8 suited, I would shove against pretty much anyone left to act. Easy open shove with the Ace-10 offsuit. And a good spot when we get it heads up in a flip with overlay from the big blind and antes. 6 King will toss, 7 Queen will toss. King Deuce offsuit, if the small blind open shoved and he's a reg, then I would call, otherwise I'd fold. Another couple of folds. Toss the 9-6 facing a shove. The Queen 10 offsuit, we can open shove if everyone folds to us. Now the hijack shoves instead, and generally I'd fold here. I definitely fold against an unknown, but against a reg, this is a spot that's worth at least considering. So let's go ahead and pull this up in PokerStove. So we'll give ourselves our Queen 10 offsuit, and the two things we need to decide are, of course, what his range is and what equity we want to see here. So let's start with the latter question. We are getting pretty good odds here, so in fact, if we were to pan out, we'd even have Universo tell us that the pot is 8,000. It costs us 6,000 to call. So we're getting about 4-3, and we want about 43% equity. Now, that assumes, of course, that these guys aren't going to call as well. When they do, it'll usually be a better hand, so I'd want a little bit better than that. But if we have, say, 45% equity, as an approximation, that should be good enough. Now, in terms of deciding on the hijack's open shoving range, if we take him to be a reg in this hypothetical, then he's effectively shoving about 5 anti-adjusted big blinds in the hijack, so we can put him on a pretty wide range. I'd put him down to, say, King 7 offsuit, hands like this. We'll get rid of 10-8 off, and hands like that to be a little bit more conservative. A lot of these semi-bluffing type hands, any suited king, mid-high suited queens. So this is a range of a bit over 40%. And we do have the equity there. So if we do know that he's a pretty loose aggressive reg, this is actually a pretty close spot But again, no problem just folding against an unknown.